Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 25th part of What If Deku Can't Stop Adopting Kids. Hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 137, Hand in Hand. Izuku really wished he could just skip this part of his life right now. Just like a whole month of his life. Things were already difficult seeing as he was dealing with the arrival of his secretary and her daughter, another new child, and all the special accommodations that came with that, dealing with the new branch of his organization and everything that came with that. And now, he had to deal with the aftermath of one of his children attacking another one. Oh, and the discovery that apparently Nees likely had DID. The first matter, of course, aside from patching up Sheena, was deciding her punishment. Now, on the one hand, this was a very serious offense. But on the other hand, the idea of giving a major punishment so soon after Sheena just got here made him wince. And in all honesty, he can't blame a child for acting out of fear, especially not when she just escaped a nightmare. He more blamed himself for not taking precautions against this. He should have seen something like this coming. So all in all, he ended up grounding Sheena for half a month, which she considered rather generous. Then of course there was the matter of dealing with the now even timider and confused Nees. Or at least, that's what Izuku wishes he could focus on. In actuality, the thing Izuku actually had to take care of next was the massive amount of damage that was caused during their battle. To say that was a difficult matter would be an understatement. It wasn't easy to fix an area after it had all its friction removed. Everything was everywhere except for where it should be. All the dirt would have to be dug out and put back, and grass patches would have to be removed and replaced. And of course, all the trees would have to be picked up, sold off, and replanted. And the amount of paperwork that was required made up a stack almost as big as his head. Gosh, I can't wait until Chel gets here. Izuku sighed as he kept reading and signing papers. Which reminded him that he still needed to hire more employees. Currently, he only had 2 security guards, a volunteer helper, and 1 secretary. Not counting the people from the science division which he left to the head of that department, his most pressing concerns were hiring more security guards. After all, if he had more guards during the attack, things would have gone better for him, at least 1 cook, and a doctor/nurse. And of course, all of this was made harder by the fact that he didn't know who was secretly an assassin sent by a powerful quirkist shadow organization. Izuku could feel a headache coming on, and so he stopped his current train of thought. Spiraling won't help you. I need to focus on what I'm doing right now, and... Brrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr pocket. Please don't be Nami. He took out his phone and looked at the caller ID. And somehow it was even worse than Nami. It was Tsuma. Possibly one of the last people Izuku would want to talk to, especially now. But he also couldn't afford to not answer, given how unstable her whole situation was. If he made a wrong move, the woman may end up killing herself. And so, he picked up. Hello, Tsuma. Hello, Midoriya, Tsuma responded, sounding timid as usual whenever she spoke to him. I'm sorry for interrupting, I know you're busy, but I wanted to see how you were doing after the attack. Well, it's a bit strange for you to be calling about, considering how much time has passed since then. Izuku pointed out. Yeah, I've been busy with work, and other stuff. Tsuma said awkwardly. You mean drinking? Izuku asked, recalling how the woman reeked of alcohol. Yes, Tsuma admitted shamefully. I'll be completely honest, I spent most of my time not working in a drunk-addled haze, wondering if I should call you. Izuku face-bombed. I'm guessing you were worried about Eri. Is she doing okay after the attack? Did any of her friends get hurt? Is she still smiling? Tsuma dropped all pretenses and started asking questions rapidly fire. She's mostly fine, Izuku said, cutting her off before she could continue assaulting him with questions. She was a bit rattled at first, but she's getting over it. You know she's been through worse, this was almost nothing to her, she's a strong girl. Can you show me some more pictures of her? Tsuma asked, and he could hear the trepidation in her voice clear as day. She was expecting him to say no. I know you don't owe me anything, but it would really put my mind at ease. Izuku thought it over. He could easily send her over some pictures to ease her mind, but he had another idea. Alright, I'll send you some more pictures, under one condition. Name it, Suma said immediately, with no hesitation. I want you to send me a picture of you, with other people, having a good time, out in public, Izuku told her. What? Suma asked, sounding absolutely taken aback. I want you to send me a picture of yourself hanging out with other people, be they co-workers or friends or whatever, and having fun outside someplace, Izuku explained. Be it a bar or karaoke, or a movie or whatever. Just get out of your house, and start living your life, please. For your sake, for my sake, and for Eri's sake. Because if she found out how you were living right now, she would burst into tears. He could practically hear her cringing, and he hoped that would be enough to motivate her. Now if you excuse me, I have work to do. Send me the picture I want, and I'll send you the picture you want. Izuku told her. I hope to hear from you soon. And with that, he hung up. Izuku sighed. And yet another problem he'd have to watch over. Knock knock. Daddy? Can I come in? Kyoku asked from the other side of his office door. Of course, honey, Izuku said after taking a second to regain his composure. He didn't want to end up venting his frustrations on his young daughter. Kyoku came in and looked at him with hopeful eyes. Daddy, can you teach me more about how you work? At first, Izuku wanted to refuse. He had so much on his plate already, but then he took a look down at his work. This would be a good opportunity to teach her about how to fix up the forest, and I did agree to teach her. Alright, come here, Izuku said, motioning to his lap. Kyoku eagerly ran up to him, and Izuku picked her up and set her on his legs. Now I don't have much time, so I need you to pay close attention, Izuku instructed her firmly but gently. Now here's how you deal with these dash. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX paperwork. Due to having to explain the process very thoroughly to his 6-year-old daughter, things went quite a bit slower. It didn't help that as time went on, it became harder and harder for Kyoko to pay attention. As despite her determination to learn, she was still a child, and paperwork was still completely and utterly dull. By hour 5, Izuku could see the life leave his daughter's eyes as she stared blankly at the paperwork. "Well, I think that's it for our lesson," Izuku said, getting her attention. "Huh? Oh, yeah." Kyoko felt a little bad about dropping out of the lesson right now. After all, she could still learn more things about how to help her family, but on the other hand, she was concerned that she might actually die of boredom if this continued. Slam! Suddenly the door burst open, and Sori came strutting in with a plate of food. "Yo boss, I got your food." "Ya missed lunch." Izuku sighed. "Sorry, please knock next time. You're setting a bad example for the kids." "Sorry, here you go boss," Sori said, serving Izuku his food. Man, that Scarde Catgirl sure is good at cooking for her age. That fish was delish. "What about me? Where's my food?" Kyoko asked, feeling a bit peckish. "Oh hey Squirt, didn't see ya there," Sori said, taking notice of the small girl. "Yeah, you got some downstairs for ya. The scaredy cat girl put some aside for ya." "Well, in that case, please go ahead and eat. I'm sure Fuku's worried about you not eating," Izuku told his youngest daughter. "Thank you, Daddy," Kyoko said as Izuku helped her off his lap, and she ran out of the room to start eating. Ugh! Izuku leaned back and let out an exasperated groan. "I really need to find a teacher for these guys as well." "Yikes, being you always looks so exhausting, boss," Sori noted, taking a good look at Izuku. "How can you get so tired from just sitting down and signing papers?" "It's more mentally exhausting than anything," Izuku said, before looking at his watch. "Well, I guess this would be a good time to take a break. Please go back to the security room." "Got it, boss. Oh, and by the way, Lady K told me to tell her if you started overworking yourself. And said that if you do, she's gonna come in here and make you take a break. Sori warned him casually. Yeah, that sounds like her alright. Izuku chuckled. Aha. Lady K sure loves you a lot. I'm jealous, sir. Sori half-joked, as she strolled out of the room. Izuku smiled. As tiring as this job is, it has its perks. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Aha, Izuku said after finishing his meal. It was about 30 minutes later, and Izuku had retired to his room and decided to watch some hero fights on the news. Ring ring. Izuku sighed, as he started to hate the sound of his phone ringing. Although thankfully it was Chel calling, hopefully, with good news. Chel, I hope everything is alright on your end. Izuku greeted. So far yes, Chel said, her voice sounding a bit tense. We're at the airport now. Cassie is staring down anything that looks at us wrong, and I have to keep her from doing something that'll get her cancelled on social media, again. Sometimes I swear it feels like I'm the older sister. I understand the frustration, Izuku said, with a slight laugh. And it's good to hear you're safe. Any sign the government tailing you, or doing anything suspect? None so far, hopefully, the realized getting into a fight with their own number one hero isn't worth it, Chel said. But we can never be too sure. Should you be saying stuff like that in front of Alice? Izuku asked, concerned for the younger girl. Oh, Alice is with Cassie, they're using the bathroom while I make this call, Chel explained. And don't worry, I have a panic button on me. If anyone tries anything while they're gone, Cassie will literally burst out of the bathroom and deal with it. And you're 100% sure that the star and stripes you gave Alice to was the real one and not a shapeshifter sent by the government? Izuku asked. Fuck. Chel cursed as she realized that was a possibility. I gotta go, I'll text you before I get on the plane if everything goes well. Bye. And with that, she immediately hung up, leaving Izuku with a pit in his stomach. Please be okay. Izuku sighed, as he forced himself to move on from that situation. At the moment he couldn't do anything for them, so he'd have to just focus on all the things he could do right now. Well, I finished all the paperwork that needed to be done by today, so I guess I can take care of that niece situation. Izuku thought to himself. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Niece had been locked up in her new room, which now had a door similar to Fuku's and could only be opened if she allowed it, making her feel a bit safer than before. Still, the poor was, justifiably, terrified of being attacked again, and refused to let anyone but Fu and Sansan enter her room, seeing as those two had protected her. Izuku hoped that she would still think of him as a friend as well, as approached her door. Bang bang bang. Izuku knocked on the hard metal door and winced a bit as he realized how loud and scary that might sound to someone like Niece in her current condition. Maybe I should add a doorbell. Hi, Niece, it's me Izuku. Izuku said in the safest tone he could muster. I'm sorry about what happened yesterday. If you don't want to let me in, that's dash. Suddenly, the door opened, and Izuku was grabbed by Nice's vectors. Before Izuku could even realize what was going on, he was forced into Nice's room and felt Nice attached to his chest. Whoa! Whoa! Izuku was barely able to stay standing, as Nice clung to him. Nice dug her head into his chest, and Izuku could hear sniffling, as well as feel tears soak into his shirt. Once Izuku managed to get his balance, he closed the door behind him and wrapped an arm around Nice. Hey, it's okay, Izuku whispered to her, as he used his other arm to rub circles into her back. I'm so sorry all that happened to you after I promised you'd be safe. It won't happen again. I swear. They all hate me. Nice sobbed, her voice muffled by Izuku's chest. Everyone but Fu and the acid girl. That's not true, Izuku assured her. Yes, some of the others don't like you as much. But, even they wouldn't dream of attacking you like that. Sheena was she had a special reason for doing what she did. It was still wrong, but she was just very scared. No one here is bad, but they can do dumb things sometimes. But I've talked to everyone, and I've made sure no one will attack you like that ever again." They spent the next few minutes in a calming embrace, as Izuku did everything he could to try and help ease the poor girl. Eventually, her crying subsided, but she still clung to Izuku like her life depended on it. "What do I do?" Nise asked through her sniffling. "You don't have to do anything," Izuku assured her. "All you have to do is show them that you don't mean any harm, and they'll trust you. It just takes time. Until then, you don't have to do anything that makes you feel scared or uncomfortable." Nise didn't say a word back, only taking in Izuku's words and using him for comfort. "I know things seem bad, but I promise you that they will get better," Izuku swore to her. "You just have to be patient." "Can you stay with me for a while?" Nise asked sheepishly. Izuku sighed internally. He was going to have extra work to do tomorrow. "Of course. I'll stay as long as you want." XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku slightly regretted saying that. Because as it turns out, for as long as she wanted, was basically the whole day. It's not that Izuku didn't want to spend time with her, he actually quite enjoyed himself. Introducing and watching shows with her, playing some games, he even started guiding her on how to control her emotions. He just dreaded how much work he'd have to make up for tomorrow. But on the bright side, he did have time to get a head start on it, as Nise had fallen asleep soon after dinner. Izuku tucked Nise into bed, putting the blanket over her, and making sure she was comfortable. "Alright, now I can try and catch up on some of my work," Izuku thought. Ding! Or maybe not. Izuku facepalmed, and hoped that this wasn't yet another thing to be put on his plate. Thankfully, it was a text from Chel, with good news. It read, "Thank you so much for bringing the shapeshifting thing. They tried that twice. Thankfully Cass took care of them. I'm on the plane now. Should be here by tomorrow. I'll be ready to work." Izuku smiled. Well, looks like tomorrow won't be so work-heavy after all. Chapter 138, Star Landing. Thank you for accompanying me, All Might. It's always nice to talk to you again. Izuku and All Might were currently in the back of a car, one with a very large roof to accommodate his size, waiting outside the airport. "No issue, young Midoriya, I'm quite eager to see Cassie again after all this time," All Might said in response. "Besides, I'm never too busy to help safeguard a child." "Speaking of children, have you given any thought to my offer?" Izuku asked him, his tone becoming serious as he shifted the conversation. Quite a bit actually." All Might sighed. "However, I can't say I've come to a proper conclusion." "I can understand your hesitation, but I assure you there's no risk of Eri doing anything bad to you," Izuku assured him. "She used her quirk a lot during the villain attack, and she had complete control thanks to Sheena. It's not so much a matter of her control issue, rather I'm concerned about how little we know about Eri's quirk itself," All Might explained. "I have no doubts it could revert me back to a healthier state, but what if it affects One for All? Or rather the embers left behind by One for All? Can it really recreate a quirk that powerful? Or at least restore my embers back to full power, or keep them at their current power? What if it runs into a similar issue that other reality-bending quirks run into, in that it has a limit to its power? What if it can't recreate One for All's power and just takes away my remaining power, or makes it weaker?" That caused Izuku to pause for a moment, before looking down and going into a mutter storm as he contemplated All Might's suggestion. Young Midoriya?" All Might poked Izuku, causing him to flinch out of his mutter storm. "Oh, sorry." Izuku apologized. "But, you're right, I can't say that's not a risk. If we're not careful, we could reduce your limited time as the symbol of peace to none, but what if we did it after your time is over? Like after the embers of One for All die out? If we did it, then the worst thing that would happen is you'd be healthy again, just without One for All." All Might took a second to ponder that. That would work. Beep. 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 Izuku's alarm went off, signifying the end of the conversation. It's time, let's go. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX the American trio. Of course, that wasn't actually all that difficult, given that Star and Stripes was a huge Amazon woman, surrounded by fans. The actually difficult part, at least for All Might, was getting to her, through the massive amount of fans surrounding him. Star! Star! All Might called out happily when he spotted the fellow #1 hero. All Might! Star cried out with equal amounts of enthusiasm. After spending a couple minutes waiting through the fans, All Might and Star finally got face to face. Clap! All Might and Star slammed their hands together and clenched, showing off their ridiculously tight muscles, and causing many women and men to swoon. Good to see you again, old friend. All Might chuckled. Same to you, master. Although I feel sorry about having to rely on you to save my sister a second time. Star replied. Nonsense. A hero's job is never done. And helping out someone in need is the definition of a hero's job. All Might laughed. Well put. Star agreed. While Star and All Might were talking surrounded by people talking and taking videos, Izuku met with Chel and Alice, who were standing off to the side. Alice was a small girl. Slightly shorter than average for her age. She had long straight blonde hair that went down to her back, and bright blue, curious eyes, as well as freckles, dotted on her face, similarly to Izuku's. She wore a white and blue dress, with red shoes and a red headband on her hair. She was currently hiding behind her mother's leg, looking at Izuku curiously. Again, I have to thank you for this. I really can't explain how much I appreciate what you're doing. Chel said, giving Izuku a respectful bow. It's my pleasure. After everything you and your sister have done, this is the least I can do. Izuku smiled and extended a hand out, which she promptly shook. Honestly, you're saving me too. If I didn't start getting some more help, I'm concerned the paperwork might have killed me before the assassins did. Cassie once told me something similar. Chel chuckled, before looking down at her daughter. Alice dear, this is Director Midoriya. He's going to be taking care of us from now on. Make sure to show him proper gratitude. Alice came out from behind her mother's leg, and gave him a shy bow, before speaking in broken Japanese. Hello, thank you, very much. Izuku kneeled down and smiled at her, before speaking back in English. You're very welcome. Alice's eyes widened. You speak English? Izuku nodded. Yes. So don't be afraid to speak to me in English if you want. He could see a bit of relief in the young girl's eyes, most likely happy that there was someone else who she could speak comfortably to. Well then, shall we get going? From the sound of it, we have a lot of work to do. Chel said, already getting her work face on. Are you sure you want to get to work right away? I'd be more than happy to give you a few days to rest, you just got here after going through a horribly nerve-wracking experience. Izuku offered. Of course, he'd absolutely love the immediate help, but he wasn't gonna sacrifice his morals for the sake of convenience. Honestly, I find paperwork rather relaxing, Chel admitted, getting the expected surprised and confused look from Izuku. Every time, I get that face every time I say that. Is it really that surprising that I enjoy my job? Well, I guess that's good for me then. I don't have to worry about you hating your tasks. Izuku said, awkwardly laughing. But, if that's the case, then we should definitely get going. I really don't want the work to stack up any more than it already has, and we have to introduce Alice to the house. Great, but how are we going to get those two out of there? Chel said, glancing over at All Might and Star. Nah, I saw this coming, I have ride prepared separately for them, Izuku explained. I have a feeling they're going to be here for quite some time, so they'll meet up with us later. Forward thinking, I like that. I have a feeling we are going to work just fine together. Chel smiled, feeling confident about the future. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ha, It's actually bigger in person, Chel said, as she, Alice, and Izuku looked up at the Midoriya Foundation home. Wow, Alice said, looking up with eyes as wide as dinner plates. This is where you'll be living from now on, Izuku told them, causing Alice's eyes to somehow get even wider. I told you we'd be going to Wonderland, Alice, Chel said to her daughter playfully. And here we are. Wonderland? That's a high standard. I'll have to do my best to meet it. Izuku laughed nervously. Well, let's go inside. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Once they entered the house, Alice started looking around madly, as if trying to scan the entire house. However, that only lasted for a few seconds, as when they entered the house, they were soon met with the arrival of Nara. This is Nara, one of the oldest kids in the house, and she also speaks a bit of English. Izuku normally would have Fu or Kate introduce the kids to the house, but seeing as Nara spoke some English and Fu was busy, she was the better choice in his opinion. She'll be guiding Alice around the house if that's okay with you. Hello. I'll do my best to guide you. Nara said in very sloppy English. Alice nervously walked up to her and gave a bow, before speaking in her own broken Japanese. Hi, I'm Alice. Hello Alice, please follow me, Nara said in English, before extending her hand out to her. Alice paused for a moment, before taking her hand and allowing Nara to take her deeper into the facility. Chel meanwhile, watched on with a fond smile on her face. I'll have to thank you again, it seems, for being so mindful. I was worried that Alice might not be able to connect to anyone here for a while, just like back in America. Izuku frowned. It's because they didn't know what her quirk was for so long, that was the reason the other kids didn't get along with her, wasn't it? Chel sighed. Quirkism's not as bad in America as it is in Japan, but it still definitely exists. Especially among children. Well, she won't have to worry about that here. No one is alone in this house. Izuku reassured her with a slight smile. Now, let's go take a look at the paperwork. I doubt it'll be anywhere near as bad as what I had to deal with back in America, Chel said confidently. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Oh, never mind, it's actually pretty close, Chel said, as she entered Izuku's office, and looked at the massive amount of papers stacked everywhere. This is almost an average day back at the hero firm. Really? This much? Izuku asked in shock. You should have seen what it was like in the early days. Chloe chuckled. Before Cassie got better at avoiding collateral damage. That was too much even for me. Well, in that case, you should find this job much easier. Things are a bit backed up due to some recent incidents. So this is actually more than usual. Izuku explained. Well, then I got here at just the right time, Chel said, before cracking her knuckles. Let's get to work, shall we, sir? XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. And this is your room, Nara explained in English to Alice, showing off her new room from the doorway. Alice took a look around. The room was smaller than the one she had in America, but that didn't bother her too much. And of course, it was plain, but that would be fixed once her aunt got there with their luggage. Feel free to decorate it, as you please, Nara explained. Alice opened her mouth to say something when suddenly, she heard something coming up from behind them. She looked back at the beginning of the hallway, and found a Beowulf, walking through the hall. Ah! Alice jumped back into her room, in fear of the nightmarish-looking wolf. Oh! Don't fear. It's not evil. Nara explained quickly, before looking over at the Beowulf, and gesturing for it to come over. Watch! The Beowulf walked up to Nara and stood in front of her. Sit, Nara ordered, and immediately, the Beowulf sat down. See? Not evil. Alice looked at the creature for a second before she started slowly approaching it. When she finally got about a foot away from it, she slowly started moving her arm towards its head, and pet it. See? It's okay. Nara assured her. They are our friends. What, is it? Alice asked, the fear in her eyes replaced with wonder and curiosity. This is grim, Nara said, trying to remember the right words. They are made by Yami's quirk. They are servants and protectors. They do what we ask. Really? Alice asked, getting so excited she went back to speaking English. They won't follow you right now. Yami has to give you permission, and Yami is not here. Nara explained, causing Alice's expression to fall. But, I can give them orders, for you. Once more, Alice's eyes lit up. Can I write it then? Nara smiled at her adorable enthusiasm. Sure, it'll keep our feet from getting tired anyway. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Alice was smiling so much her mouth almost hurt as she and Nara rode atop the Beowulf down the stairs. So what is this made of? Alice asked excitedly, looking down at the inky black fur of the Beowulf. Negative emotions, Nara explained in English. It was really hard to speak in English this much, but she was actually glad. This was a real test of skills. Yami takes negative emotions and makes them into monsters. Cool. Alice gushed as she started poking and prodding the Beowulf. Nara giggled. This girl's adorable. As they were talking, the Beowulf brought them into the cafeteria. This is where we eat, Nara explained. Are you hungry? Alice nodded. Can I have Japanese food? Okay. Nara nodded. Beowulf, kitchen. The Beowulf started walking toward the kitchen. When they arrived, they opened the door to the kitchen and found Fuku inside, listening to music with her earpods and getting ready to cook some fish she caught earlier. Fuku hummed as she pulled out some pots and pans before turning around and seeing the two girls and Beowulf. Ah! Wait, it's just Nara. Oh, don't scare me like that, I almost let out my gas. Gas. Alice wondered if she understood that correctly, or if she got her Japans wrong again. Sorry Fuku, I just wanted to make some food for our new friend here, Nara said, before moving slightly to reveal Alice behind her. Oh, Fuku said, slightly more nervous in the presence of a new person. Hi. Hi, Alice said back. This is Fuku, she's so be gentle please, Nara told Alice in English. But she's really good at cooking. Nara then turned back to Fuku. Speaking of which, Fuku, could you make us some of whatever you were making? Okay. I was gonna make some sushi. Are you okay with that? Fuku asked nervously. Yes, Alice answered, understanding the bulk of what she said. I'll have some too thanks, Nara said. Maybe make some for Izuku too, I bet he must be miserable with all that paperwork. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Ugh. I can't believe we're halfway done. Izuku collapsed back into his chair. The progress the two had made was astounding, or rather the progress Chel had made was astounding. Izuku looked up at Chel at her own desk and noticed that she was completely focused, in a world of her own. Her hands moved faster than Izuku thought possible for a normal human, as she typed stuff on her computer with one hand and signed papers with the other. It seemed the Bates sisters were masters in their respective professions. She really did save me. This is great. Izuku smiled and leaned back. Now I just have to deal with getting Jin here, getting Yami back, creating more Grim, getting the science division settled, and of course, getting all the children acclimated, and hiring more people, and then things will go back to normal. Well, at least I don't have to worry about the paperwork so much. Chapter 139, Talentless Sheena. You are an idiot. Sheena and Yanda were sitting in Sheena's room. Sheena was currently sitting on her bed, while Yanda stared her down with her arms crossed. I thought she was a threat. Sheena defended herself, giving Yanda a pleading look. Yes, I get why you did it. But the way you went about it was utterly stupid. Yanda scolded her. If the girl was just waiting for any chance to hurt father, she would have done it, long before we got the chance to stop her. Meaning she either didn't mean any harm, at least not yet, or she was waiting for a good chance to kill father in an isolated place. Meaning the best course of action was just to keep an eye on her, and make sure she's never alone with father, or anyone to be safe. Had things gone poorly, she could have killed you, claimed it was an accident, and we'd be back where we started, just with you dead. I wouldn't have lost. Sheena thought with a pout. I'm strong. Yeah, and so is she. I don't know much about combat, but I do know that it's not a simple matter. Get overconfident, or make a mistake, and that could be your death. Yonda pointed out. She wasn't trying to kill me, I know what it looks like when someone tries to kill you. Sheena pointed out, recalling the Wainies had fought her. But you didn't know that when you went in, did you? Yonda asked her. No. Sheena pouted guiltily. Ugh, that being said. I can't say that this wasn't useful. We did get some rather useful information from this fight. Yonda conceded. Doesn't make what you did any less stupid, but at the very least we can call you a useful idiot instead a regular idiot. Why are you so mean? Sheena asked, tears in the corner of her eyes. Because I have to hear every complaint, whine, cry and depraved and depressing thought that goes through everyone's heads, so excuse me if I'm in a bad mood. Yonda explained, completely unsympathetic towards the younger girl's plight. But also because you've made the job of getting everyone else to trust you much, much harder. Now Sheena was actually crying. This scolding was somehow worse than the one Izuku had given her. This was a mistake. I wish I never attacked that girl. Good. Yonda sighed. But, I supposed I've scolded you enough. We have work to do. I've already told the others that the fight was a misunderstanding, but let's just say it didn't do you any favors. So now we really need to find a way for you to stand out and get people to like you. Yonda then pulled out a pack of tissues and threw it at Sheena. Now dry those tears, we have work to do. Were you planning on making me cry? Sheena asked as she looked down at the tissue. Yup. Now move. Yonda ordered. We have a busy day ahead of us. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda took Sheena to the kitchen, where she had laid out 2 pieces of bread and a slice of cheese. Now, cooking is a very good way to get people to like you. Fuku is a great example of that. Pretty much everyone likes her by now, despite her hiding from half the people here. Yonda explained. So first, we're going to start with something simple. We have an American guest, let's see if we can surprise her with a grilled cheese sandwich. I don't know, I've never cooked anything before. Sheena pointed out, nervously twiddling her thumbs. It's not that hard. I'm sure you can manage something so simple. Yonda scoffed. XXXXXXXXXX. A few minutes later, Sheena and Yonda were looking down at the counter, at the result of Sheena's work. A plate with what looked like a lump of charcoal. How? Was all Yonda asked. How did you manage to mess it up this badly? And why is the cheese still here? Oh, right, the cheese. Sheena looked down at the cheese she forgot to put between the bread. I knew was forgetting something. Yonda facepalmed. Alright, I have many things I want to say to you right now, but I know if I make you cry again it's going to waste more time. So let's try something, even simpler. The psychic girl went over to the pantry and pulled out a cup of cup ramen. This should be impossible to mess up. All you have to do is follow the directions of the cup. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. A few minutes later, Sheena and Yonda were staring at the counter, which had a flaming cup of ramen on it. Sheena cringed and waited for the mental tongue lashing she was sure to receive. But it never came. Yonda was simply too stunned to think. Instead, she walked over to the wall and slammed her head into it a couple of times. Sorry, I just needed to hurt myself to take my mind off, whatever this was. Yonda explained as she turned to Sheena, showing the bruise on her head. I'm pretty, that's not good. Sheena replied. Neither is your cooking. Yanda shouted, giving Sheena a headache as she screamed the words into her head. While Sheena cowered in fear, Yanda took a second to calm herself down. Okay. Yanda said after taking a minute. Clearly, you are not good at cooking. Let's try something else, shall we? Before I lose what's left of my sanity. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Sheena and Yanda were now in the training room, or rather looking into the training room from the doorway. The training room currently had puddles of blood and piles of organs lying around, which Sheena was looking at with disgust. Okay, another thing you can do to make people like you is help clean. Yanda explained, pointing to the cart of cleaning products they'd brought. People hate cleaning, so if you do it for them, they'll like you more. Okay. That makes sense. How do I clean this? Sheena asked. Just use these chemicals, mop up the floor, and put all of the organs into this black bag. Yanda explained, pointing at the various supplies she'd need to clean this mess. Here I'll. VRRRRR. Yanda stopped that thought when she suddenly felt her phone vibrate. She pulled out her phone and saw a text message from her man inside UA, Mineta. I have what you asked me for. The text read. Yanda grinned sinisterly. Give me 1 second, dear. I need to take this. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yanda walked back towards the training room, with a huge grin on her face. If nothing else, at least one thing went her way today. However, that grin then swiftly fell, the moment she saw the training room. Instead of there being puddles of blood, blood was now splattered all over the place. In fact, there somehow appeared to be more of it. In the center of the room was Sheena, desperately trying to mop things up, while being covered in blood and organs. Yanda just stared at her for a while, before thinking to herself. Why does it look like there's more blood here than before? If I couldn't read minds, I'd swear she was doing this on purpose. Stop. Yanda ordered, causing Sheena to freeze up. Just stop. Before you make things even worse. I'm sorry. Sheena apologized tearfully. Just get over here so we can clean you up and move on to the next thing. Yanda mentally sighed. It's almost lunch, surely you can wash dishes. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Crack. Yanda couldn't look anymore. But she didn't really need to either. She could tell by Sheena's thoughts that she broke yet another plate. How many plates was that? The 10th. Sheena shamefully admitted. Turn off the water and get down from there. Yanda ordered. Let's move on. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX the tables, and set out various papers on the desk. Now some of the people here are less smart than others, so let's test your intelligence to see if you're smart enough to help them out. Yonda explained. I've set up these tests to show how well you do in multiple subjects. Let's hope you can ace at least one of these. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Slam. Yonda slammed her head into the table, into the papers she just finished grading. And on those papers were some rather low scores. The highest being 31% and the lowest being 8%. Ah! Yonda screamed in frustration. I'm sorry. Yonda apologized tearfully. Next thing. Now. Yonda shouted. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Awa. Sheena and Yonda were now in Shiruko's room, as Sheena was now attempting to knit a sock, under the supervision of Shiruko herself. It was going about as expected, as Sheena had just pricked herself with the needle for the 22nd time. Shiruko winced and grabbed Sheena's hands to stop her. I don't think you're cut out for knitting. Yonda facepalmed, slapping her now bruised forehead. XXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Otoko didn't know what he was looking at. He was just doing some panting in the art room when Sheena and Yonda came in, and Yonda had Sheena start. Painting for lack of a better word. It was more like Sheena was just splattering paint all over a canvas widely, and what came out reflected that. Apparently, it was supposed to be a cat, but it was completely unrecognizable. Yonda then smashed her head against a canvas and dragged Sheena out of the room. Weird. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Yonda and Sheena had returned to Sheena's room, where Yonda was lying motionless on the ground, while Sheena sat on the bed, looking ashamed. Sheena, how is it you seem to have, and forgive me for being blunt, absolutely no talent whatsoever? Yonda asked, not removing her face from the floor. Well, I'm not used to doing things as myself. Most of the time whenever people wanted me to do anything, they wanted me to do it as Gammy. Sheena explained. And when I'm Gammy, it's just so different. I'm not used to being me. Ugh, I hate that makes sense. Damn those quirkist bastards. Yonda thought to herself, before her eyes widened, as a realization suddenly came to her. I'm an idiot. I can't believe I didn't think of this sooner. Yonda picked herself up and jumped to her feet, before looking over at Sheena. Sheena. Can't you just kill your talentlessness or something? Or turn into Gammy? Then you can do pretty much anything. Sheena frowned. I don't want that. What do you mean you don't want that? Yonda screamed so loud it caused Sheena to jump back against the wall of her bed. I'm sorry. Sheena quickly apologized. But I don't want to use my quirk for everything. Sometimes it feels like the only thing good about me is my quirk, even though I don't really like my quirk. I want to use my own talents or just get better at things I'm not good at. Also, I don't like cutting myself. Sheena looked down at the scars that littered her pale arms and legs. Her black dress covered up the scars over the rest of her body, but she could practically feel them. Yonda, on the other hand, was fuming. On the one hand, all of her plans had failed, and Sheena was refusing to go through with the simple solution that had helped take care of this in a snap. But at the same time, she did understand where she was coming from. A lot of people just saw her as the girl who reads minds, and while she didn't really resent that, she did appreciate it when people looked at her as more than a quirk with a person attached. Ugh. Fine. I will think of some other ways you can make yourself useful. Yonda said, before pulling out her thought silencers. But first I'm going to take a nap, I hit my head too many times. Yonda placed her silencers into her ears, and turned them on, before laying on the floor and falling asleep. Sheena breathed a sigh of relief. Yonda was not as bad as she first thought. She was a bit mean and forceful, but she was a rather hard worker, and she seemed to have good intentions, even if the way she went about them left something to be desired. Then again, if Sheena complained about that, she'd be a hypocrite. Ah. Sheena laid back on her bed and wondered what she should do now. She was still grounded, and she wasn't friends with anyone here yet, so she was kind of at a loss as to what to do next. Well, one idea came to mind. Something she'd done when she'd been grounded bored before. XXXXXXXXXXXX. Ugh. Fuku groaned as she walked through the halls back to her room, utterly exhausted. First, someone had made a mess in the kitchen. Somehow they managed to set a ramen cup on fire, which was a pain to clean up. Then after she made more food, someone broke like a dozen dishes, which was even more of a pain to clean. She couldn't wait to get back into her room and relax to some anime intros. Darker than night. Deep in the woods, you'll find. Standing alone. A circus that no one knows. Master of all. Nearly 10 meters tall. Watching the show. Eyes that will slowly grow. All who perform smile with faces torn. Fuku stopped as suddenly she heard some wonderful singing coming from somewhere close. That voice, it's beautiful. But, who is that? Is it one of the new girls? Despite her normally cautious nature, Fuku found herself walking towards the sound of that voice, wanting to know who was singing so wonderfully. Happy with glee. Strange as they look to me. Shall the fun start? Follow me. To the Darkwood Circus, please. Join the festivity. It's right, here. Fuku stopped in front of one of the doors, which she realized was Sheena's, and looked at it with fearful wide eyes. No, that voice can't be her, can it? Come and see the two-headed freak of nature. Gaze at a siren, her flesh deformed. Fear the blue beast and his love for cold decaying meals that once were warm. Did we ask to breathe? Did we ask to only be abused? Living in bodies like these. Suddenly the singing got louder, and even more beautiful than before, so much so that Fuku's fear was overtaken by awe. And all she could pay attention to was the song. When you look at me, what is it that you see? Now a face rotting and torn at the seams. Through the pain, I scream. How it hurts so badly. But we can't help it or do anything. As the girl would weep telling me this sadly. We perform always, the circus repeats. How I love the show. How I love it all so. Can you see how fun a circus can be? As our flesh decays. And our eyes melt away. With a face rotting. It's fun every day. How I long to die. Why am I still alive? Anyone. Help me escape from this life. You can never leave. Yes, I have a feeling, long ago, someone had told this to me. The song died down into humming, and Fuku was released from the spell of the music and was able to think again. That was beautiful. Her voice is amazing. Fuku was almost in tears from not only how great the singing was, but also the lyrics. Some of which stirred inside her. Part of her wanted to give applause, but that would mean giving away the fact that she was listening in, and the last thing she wanted to do was go face to face with someone as scary as Sheena. You heard my singing? Asked the imaginary Sheena in Fuku's head as she held up her scythe with a scary look in her eyes. Now you have to die. Nope. Nope. No, I'm good. Time to get going, Fuku. Fuku thought to herself as she quickly and silently made her way toward her room. But, I hope she really is trustworthy. It'd be a shame for a voice that pretty to belong to someone evil. Chapter 140, Alice in Funderland. Nara and Alice were sitting in the library at one of the tables, with various books all over the table. Wow, you are a really fast learner. Nara praised the younger girl with an amazed look on her face. It's only been a couple of days, but your Japans has already improved a lot. Alice blushed and turned away to hide her smile. It's nothing. I'm kinda cheating though. Cheating? Nara raised a brow. Alice pulled out a small, folded-up piece of paper from her dress pocket and unfolded it before showing it to Nara. 12:30. Nara will help Alice Bate learn Japanese. Alice Bate will understand things very quickly and learn very fast. The paper read in English. After managing to read it, Nara's eyes widened with surprise and realization. That's right, I forgot how powerful your quirk is. That's a really clever way to use it. Alice nodded. I've learned so many things because of it. It's my favorite way to use my quirk. Really? Nara asked. Aha. Well, I haven't used my quirk in a lot of different ways yet. Alice admitted, looking down at the paper. It's kind of scary. Nara didn't respond at first. Mainly because she agreed. The thought of someone being able to manipulate your actions and even thoughts without you knowing, and without having to be anywhere near you, was scary. But she didn't want to judge her because of that. That would kind of defeat the purpose of the place like this, and it just felt wrong. It's only scary if you use it for scary things. Nara encouraged her, giving her a pat on the head. But you don't seem like the type to do that, so you're not scary in my book. Alice smiled and blushed once more. Thank you. So cute. Nara internally gushed, trying her hardest not to let it show and make her look like an idiot. Sup, loser? Shouted a familiar voice coming into the library. Ugh. Nara smiled and good mood instantly vanished as Ken walked over towards them. What do you want, Ken? Just taking a break from my job to see the new kid. Ken said, taking a sip of a juice box and looking over at Alice, who looked at him curiously. Nara sighed. Well, I guess there's no better time to introduce you to. Alice, this is my idiot brother Ken. Feel free to ignore anything he says. Ken stuck his tongue at his sister, who did the same thing. Hello. Alice greeted, giving a polite wave. Hey. Ken responded before looking her over. So you're the American. I thought you'd be fat. Slap. Nara reached over the table and slapped her brother on the top of his head, her face red with anger. Ken. What the hell? Ow. What? I thought most Americans were fat. At least that's what everyone told me. Ken hissed, rubbing the top of his head. Ken, that's super racist. Nara scolded him. American isn't a race, is it? Ken asked, not 100% sure of that statement. Wait, is American a race? Nara herself asked, her rage subsiding for a moment, as she thought about that for a second. As they were thinking about that, they heard a snicker, and looked down at Alice, who was trying to hide her laughter. American isn't a race, silly. Alice said, still trying not to laugh. It's, actually I don't know what it is either. Well then let's just say that I'm right, and be done with it. Ken smirked while crossing his arms. Nara opened her mouth to counter, but Ken started walking away before she could. Anyway, welcome to the house, new kid, try not to let my sister infect you with loser. And with that he was gone before Nara could get a word in. Ugh, he is such a pain. Nara groaned. I think he's funny. Alice added. She could tell there was no real malice between the two, and that their teasing was simply part of their sibling bond. It was somewhat similar to how her mother acted towards her aunt. Ugh, don't let him hear that or his head will get so big he won't be able to walk through doors. Nara snickered, causing Alice to laugh with her. After they settled down, something came to mind. He said he had a job. Alice noted, looking up at Nara curiously. Oh, right, that. Nara sighed. I mean, yeah, technically he's helps design games. Alice looked at her with wide eyes, unsure if she had understood that correctly. I'm sorry, could you say that in English? Okay. He helps make games. Nara said, in English this time. Huh? Alice shouted out in confusion and amazement. He makes games. How? What kind? Does he use his quirk? Does he do it alone? How does dash? Whoa! Slow down. Nara told her in English, not wanting to get overwhelmed with all these questions. I guess I should have seen this coming. A kid working on a video game isn't exactly normal. Well, I guess the best way to explain this would be to start with our quirks. Alice's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she suddenly pulled out a notebook and got ready to write. Ha! What a coincidence! Nara thought, before getting on with her explanation. Well, me and Ken technically have the same quirk, but they do different things. It's called Omni, and it allows both of us to transform into 10 different forms. But each of us have different forms. Cool lol. Alice cooed, looking up at her with amazement. Show me. Please show me. Nara wanted to refuse as it would be rather impractical to transform in the middle of a conversation, but she couldn't find it within herself to refuse when Alice was looking at her like she was the most amazing person in the world right now. All right. Just give me a second. She then activated her Omnitrix and started looking for the least inconvenient form she had right now. Alice looked at her Omnitrix curiously, taking a close look at each silhouette. After a few seconds of fiddling, Nara finally found the right form. Alright, now you might want to cover your eyes, there is gonna be a flash. Nara slammed down on the dial, and Alice covered her eyes as a pink flash consumed the girl. When the flash died down, and Alice lowered her hands from her eyes. She saw that Nara was gone and in her place was Ditto. Ta-da! Nara said, raising up her arms to show off her current form. I call this one Ditto. Well, Ken called it Ditto and the name just kinda stuck. Amazing! Alice rushed over and looked at Ditto, moving around to see them from every angle, while frantically writing things down. Each form has a different quirk, and this one can do this. Ditto suddenly split into two. Ta-da! Wow wow! Alice gasped, looking at the two Dittos. How does it work? It looked like your body just split in two. Are stretchy? If you cut off an arm, would it turn into a clone and grow back? Can I touch you? Alice, please slow down. One of the Naras said at the same time. Even with two of us, we can only answer so much. Let's just get back onto the main topic here. The other Nara said. Ken has a form called Upgrade, which lets him merge with technology, control it, and well, upgrade it. He can even use it to program things, like games. That's amazing. I wanna see it. Please, oh please let me see it. Alice begged. He. Alright, if you're that excited. Ken should be getting back to work now, so we should be able to see him. Nara merged her two selves back into one. Come on, follow me. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Nara, now back to normal, had brought Alice to the game design room, and the moment she stepped in, she looked around with wonder. The room was covered in various different machines and computers, and all of them were currently taken over by Ken in his upgrade form. Whoa! Alice looked at all the monitors, rapidly modeling and creating new models and features. Oh hey guys! Came Ken's voice from one of the monitors. What do you want? I'm kind of busy here. I just wanted to show Alice how you're making the game. Nara explained. So you came to see the master at work? Ken said, popping his head out of the computer screen. Alice gasped when she saw this, and immediately ran over to him. Can I touch you? Please. Sure? Ken agreed, a bit weirded out by the sudden strange question. Immediately, Alice touched Ken's head, and much to her delight it felt like a mix of goo and metal, and was as cold as both. I've never felt something like this before. What are you made of? I have no idea. Ken answered honestly. No one does really. I'm kinda half machine and half, not machine. Organic. Nara corrected. Yeah, that. Ken confirmed, before slinking back into the monitor. Anyway, I got some more work to do. Only have a few more minutes before I transform back. Alright. Nara turned Alice towards her. Ken only programs the game, but all the ideas and designs are actually made by other people. It's actually pretty impressive. They have a character designer, a monster designer, a writer and more. Can I meet them? Alice asked. Well, the monster designer is out right now, and the writer and world designer is, let's just say it'll take a bit before you can meet them face to face. But you can Shiruku. She's the character designer, and she also makes clothes. Nara explained. Like hats? Alice suddenly asked, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Maybe? Nara wondered where the heck that question came from. I've never seen her make one before, but I'm sure she would if you asked her. Somehow Alice's eyes grew even wider, and she beamed so hard she almost appeared to be glowing. I'm guessing you want to meet her, so just come with me. Nara said, taking Alice's hand. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Wow! The moment they entered Shiruka's room, Alice's head started swerving around so fast that Nara was worried she'd break her neck. Meanwhile, Alice was in pure awe. The room was entirely covered in all sorts of clothes. Cool clothes, cute clothes, pretty clothes. All of them were laid out on the walls. There were of course lots clothes-making materials littered around the room. Oh, and there were also spiders crawling all over the room, but Nara had warned her of that beforehand, so she wasn't freaked out. In fact, she was far more amazed than anything, as she watched hundreds of spiders help decorate the various clothes. It was mesmerizing. My, who do we have here? Shiruku was currently sewing a dress on the ceiling, and stopped what she was doing to lower herself to the ground. Shiruku reached the ground, and turned herself right side up, right in front of Alice, towering over the small girl completely. Is this the American girl I heard about? Alice nodded. You make very pretty clothes. Shiruku smiled. Nothing like hearing a cute girl compliment her efforts. Thank you. You have a very pretty body. Especially your hair. Did she really just say you have a very pretty body? Nara thought to herself. Both Alice and Shiruku inspected each other, as both girls were very curious about the body of the other. Would you mind if I took your measurements? I can already think of a ton of dresses that would look absolutely adorable on you. Shiruku asked her, already planning out everything she was going to do. Okay, but can I have a hat too? Like a really cool one? Alice asked hopefully. Okay, I can definitely make some cute outfits with hats. Shiruku said with a very pleased expression. Well, it looks like they're getting along. I should probably leave them be, I can finally get some studying done. Nara thought. Well, I'll leave you two to it. Have fun. Wait. Alice suddenly ran over, and wrapped her arms around Nara's waist, before saying in English. Thank you. Well, now I have diabetes, worth it. Nara thought, as she hugged her back. Snap. Nara and Alice looked over to the source of the sound, and saw Shiruku holding a camera. I'll send this to you later. Shiruku said with a smile. Nara was very happy to be surrounded by such good people. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX was currently sitting by the pool in her swimsuit, with 2 legs in the water, and a few drinks next to her. It had been a long day, and while she did enjoy paperwork, work was still work and it got exhausting. But at the same time, there was nothing better than relaxing after a long day of work. Mommy! Well, some things were better. Chel looked back and saw her daughter running towards her, wearing something she hadn't seen before. It was a purple dress with spider web-like black lines all over it, as well as a hat with 2 fake black spiders on it. One big, one small. Mommy, look. That spider girl made me these cute clothes and this hat. Alice said, as she ran up to her mother, before spinning around to show off her new attire. Wow, it looks very nice, sweetheart. Chel smiled. It was good to see her daughter this excited. Looks like you have a new hat to add to your collection. Alice nodded very enthusiastically. I had so much fun today. This place is wonderful. I told you you'd like it, my little pendragon. Chel chuckled as she pulled her daughter closer and kissed her on the forehead. Please make sure to thank Mr. Midoriya for all this. Without him we'd be in a much worse situation. Alice nodded in agreement. Mr. Midoriya is really amazing. He made this whole place even though he's not an adult yet. Believe me, lit pendragon, he's more competent than most adults I work with. Chel chuckled. Honestly, when she heard she'd have to work for a teenager, she was more than a bit concerned. But Izuku had proven to be as intelligent as he was kind. Actually no, he was far more kind than intelligent, a bit too kind actually, which was proving to be his biggest flaw. But having a boss whose problem was being too nice, was nice problem to have. I'm glad you had fun, pendragon. Chel said, lovingly addressing her daughter by her nickname. I'm sure today is just the first of many adventures. Chapter 141, Niza and Easy. Izuku was on his way to Niza's room, with a plate of food in hand. It had been about a week since Sheena's attack, and Niza had still refused to come out of her room, to the surprise of no one. But at the very least she had made herself comfortable in her room. Knock, knock. Izuku knocked on Niza's door. Niza, it's me, Izuku. I have your lunch. The only people Nice let into her room were Fu, Sanson, and Izuku himself, but Izuku hoped with time that she would open up. Suddenly the metal door opened, and Izuku could now enter. Nice's room had changed, rather drastically. Seeing as Nice was a shut-in, she needed to find things to do as a shut-in. Fortunately for her, there was a friend. An ally to all shut-ins around the world. Anime. Yes, Nice had gotten rather hooked on anime, and her room reflected that. Posters of different anime guys and girls covered the walls, various figures lined her shelves, and there were 2 body pillows next to Nice, who was sitting on a beanbag chair, watching more anime. No you dummy, Sakura is the best choice, she's your childhood friend. Nice yelled at the screen. She is obviously the best waifu. Where did she even learn that word? Izuku thought to himself as he entered the room, and closed the door behind him. Nice had become an otaku in no time flat, and Izuku wasn't sure what to think of that. On the one hand, Izuku didn't have an inherent problem with otakus but... Don't worry Sakura, I will always love you, Nice said to one of her body pillows, and she caressed it lovingly. But sometimes their behaviors could be problematic. Hey, Nice, Izuku said to get her attention. I have your food. Without a word, got up, and grabbed the plate, before sitting back down, her eyes never leaving the screen. Yeah, this is not healthy. Izuku sighed. Nice, can you pause that for a second? Nice pouted for a second but quickly complied, taking the remote and pausing the show for the time being. What? Izuku took a second to think of the best way to go about this. He didn't want to try and force her out of her comfort zone, or even push her out of it, especially since she just started making a comfort zone, but he did want to see if he could expand that zone, just a bit. I'm very glad that you're getting comfortable here. That you're starting to feel a bit safe. But I was wondering if maybe you'd be willing to talk to people more. It doesn't have to be anyone you don't know. Maybe just me or Fu, or Sanson. I just don't want you to get lonely. I'm not lonely, I have so many friends here, Nice said, gesturing to all the figurines and body pillows. I have Sakura, Hinata, Machida, Zero, Rimuru, and all my friends on the internet. So that's where she learned those words. Izuku cringed internally. He couldn't push any more than he already was, given the situation, but he was liking how this unfolded less and less. Well, so long as you're happy. But I would consider talking to Fu and Sanson a bit more. If you want to. Nice frowned at that. They don't really seem to talk much. Oh, yeah. Izuku quickly realized the fault with his logic. Neither Fu nor Sanson were particularly talkative, especially around people they were unfamiliar with. Well, then I guess nothing can be done. I'll leave you be, but if you ever want to talk to me just call. Okay? Nice nodded, before looking back at the TV and unpausing. Izuku left the room, giving Nice a concerned look all the while. Soon Izuku was out of the room and had closed the door behind him, before immediately going into a slump. This was not a good situation. Nice was getting comfortable, but in a way that could be problematic in the future. At least with Fuku she actually wanted to go out and talk to people, Nice seemed to have no desire to do the same, and she had reason to not feel safe outside of her room here. And he couldn't do anything about it without the risk of making her feel scared or uncomfortable, and maybe even destroying her trust in him. Ugh. I need to take something for this headache. Izuku thought as he rubbed his temples. All I can do now is wait and build her trust in me. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Things were not going as planned. True, the caretaker was a very nice person. He just radiated a sense of safety and kindness she'd never felt before. Never something she'd felt from her parents anyway. It hurt to accept, but it seemed like Fu was right. Her parents hadn't truly loved her. Some part of her always knew, she just didn't want it to be true. But now that she'd failed, there was no point in denying the truth any longer. She couldn't return, so she might as well embrace this new chance. Not that Nice gave her much choice. It was bizarre really, that girl coming out of nowhere, but she was an opportunity. so she allowed her to act while she lay dormant. The problem was that Nise was an incompetent coward. She had no desire to stay in a room for the rest of her life, debating who was the true husbando with morons on the internet. Something needed to give. It seemed she'd have to intervene once more. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Fu walked up to Nise's room with a plate of food in his hand. Nise, I have your dinner. Come in. Came Nise's voice on the other side. But there was something off about it. Fu raised his guard and entered the room as the door opened. When he came in, he saw Nise sitting on her beanbag chair, looking at the screen. Fu took a close look at her from behind, and once again he got that feeling of wrongness. Nise didn't seem as enraptured as she usually was with what she was watching, nor was she clutching a figurine or body pillow. Something was up, he was sure of it. Hello, Fu. Nise said in a voice that was far too sweet. And that's when Fu figured it out. Hey, not Nise, it's been a while since we last talked, hasn't it? Fu said in response. You already tried this act back in the forest, so how about we just skip this part? Okay? There was a short pause before Nise turned to look at Fu with a sharp glare. You're too smart, you know that? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX And then the next thing she knew, she was waking up on a bed, being stared down by Kiba and Fuku. Ha! Nii shot up and looked at both girls with alarm. About time you woke up. You need to answer for yourself. Kiba glared at her harshly. What? Nii's backed up as far away from them as she could. What? How did I get here? Answer for what? What did I do? Something horrible, take a look. Kiba pointed at Nii's chest. Nii looked down at her chest, and quickly her face scrunched up in disgust. Tapped to her chest was a note with the words Ichigo is best girl written on it. How could you say something so horrid? Fuku asked her. Wait. I didn't write this. I don't know what happened, but I'd never write something like this. Nii defended herself, her fears currently put to the side by her fan rage. I didn't even think Darling in the Franxx was that good. Okay, I wouldn't go that far, Kiba argued. I kinda lost interest when they went into space. Fuku admitted, getting a slightly betrayed look from Kiba. I'm sorry, I couldn't keep up with the plot anymore. Listen, it's all very simple. Kiba started explaining. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Lady Kiba, I don't think having big boobs gives you an advantage in a fight, Fuku argued. The three girls were now sitting in a circle on the floor of Kiba's room, continuing their lengthy discussion. Nonsense. The larger your boobs are, the more flesh there is between your heart and an attack. Kiba argued. And they're also very bouncy, I'm sure they could negate an attack. I don't think that's possible, Nii argued, before going into thought. Then again, I don't remember ever seeing someone get hit in the boobs. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Obviously yanderas are worse than tsunderas. Yanderas are creepy murderers and tsunderas are just annoying at worst. Kiba argued. Most of the time I think that tsunderas are pretty cute. But they're everywhere. Nii complained. In almost every anime, the first or second girl is almost always a tsundere, and they're just so mean. At least yanderas are more rare. Oh wow, they both make good points. Fuku thought as she went into deep contemplation on which deer was worse. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Guns. Nii shouted. Her and Kiba were face to face, locked in a heated argument. Swords. Kiba shouted back. Guns. Swords. Guns. Swords. Guns. Swords. Gun swords. Fuku added, to try and appease both sides. The two looked at her curiously. Gun swords. They then looked back at each other and shook hands. Gun swords. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Lady Kiba, I don't know how you're not getting this, Fuku said, looking at Kiba sadly. Isekais are amazing, even if there are a lot of them. I'm sorry, Fuku, but they're overdone and boring. Kiba argued, firmly crossing her arms. Look, here is the plot to every isekai ever. A person dies, gets reincarnated, gets overpowered ability, and never has any real problems. It's just boring. It's not that simple. Not all of them are overpowered from the start, sometimes they have to work for their Knees argued. Like that time I got reincarnated as a slime or the spider one. And even if they are overpowered, the show can still be super wholesome. Fuku added. Like in Kuma Kuma Bear or that one about killing slimes for 300 years. It's like a comfy slice of life fantasy. Kiba sighed. I mean, maybe not all isekais are bad, but most of them are. Like that one about being turned into a vending machine. Okay, actually, that one is good, Knees argued. Let explain dash. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX laughter, as they tried to stay upright. Oh, wait. My favorite joke was the one where she covered her friend in slime. Kiba added. I remember that. I laughed so hard I had to pause it. Knees laughed. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. I'm still not over Rengoku's death, Fuku admitted, looking down at her legs. I know, right? Kiba agreed. He was such a great character, why did he have to die? And so soon too. Knees added. He was only there for one arc. Couldn't he have at least died in the final like Dash? XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX Niz asked. Trash is a strong word, but yeah, I don't like it. Kiba agreed. Kirito's just so boring, Fuku added. Did you guys know about that SAO spin-off that's actually good? Niz asked them. The other two's eyes went wide and they shook their heads. Oh, you should watch it. It's about Gun Gale Online and Dash. While the girls were having their discussion, Fu was on the other side of Kiba's door, listening in. Looks like that did the trick. Fu thought. The girls had been talking for hours now, and he was pretty sure some bond had been formed. With that, his mission had been complete. Now he just needed to file the report. XXXXXXXXXXX. So you met with the other personality again. Izuku and Fu were in his office, with serious expressions on their face. Fu nodded. It wasn't for long. She didn't really want to stick around. But I did confirm two different things. And those are? Izuku paid close attention. 1. What she wants. Or at least what she says she wants. Fu explained. I think she was being honest, but I can't tell for sure. But she said that she just wanted her old life to disappear. I see. Izuku took a second to try and figure out what that meant exactly, but that was a lot to try and put together, so he put it to the side for now. And what was the second thing you confirmed? Her name, Fu explained. It's Kira. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 26. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.